Happy Monday morning. May the 4th be with you. Lesson 5, reading. Here we go. All right. So you got your vocabulary this morning. We're reintroducing synonym, a word having the same or nearly the same meaning as another. An antonym, a word having the opposite meaning as another. Colored. It's a term referring to a person of different race, usually African American. Now I want you to remember, colored was not a bad word. It's an outdated word. It's a word that we don't use anymore, but it wasn't a bad word. It wasn't a derogatory word, meaning it wasn't a word that put people down. It wasn't made to make you feel less. A simile, a figure of speech in which two unlikely things are compared, usually uses like or as. She was like a rose. Loathed. When you loathe something, you feel disgusted or intense dislike. Norms. It's a routine. It's a procedure. It's something we do all the time. It's the norm. Okay, so let's think about our learning targets for today. I can use evidence from the Hope Chest when I discuss the text. I can follow the norms for triad talk when I participate in a conversation. Okay, so we're not going to participate in conversations in our actual lessons because we're not together, but when we talk in Zoom, we would be able to work on the triad talk. I can summarize chapter 3 of the Hope Chest using specific details, and I can describe actions Myrtle takes in chapter 3 and what this says about the type of person she is. I like Myrtle. Myrtle seems to be a bit of a spitfire. She's going to be a lot of fun. So this is something that you would see if we were together having conversations in the classroom. So it's important that you at least know the kinds of routines that your 5th grade teacher is going to do with you there in class when you're working in triads. So you're looking to contribute to your discussion in a positive way, saying things like, would you like to add to my idea? Or can you tell us more about what you're thinking? Remember that when you're having a conversation with your triad or with your learning group, it's all supposed to be positive. You're there to help each other. You're there to ask each other questions and learn from one another. You would say things like, my evidence is here on this page in this part of the paragraph. Because when you're learning in small groups, you're learning as if you're taking my teaching role and helping each other. You're pointing out where you find evidence. You're bringing the attention of your group to something specific inside the text. And it's all done in a positive and learning environment. Nobody's here to be mean to one another. And if you do have a hard time or you're questioning what somebody is trying to explain, you say things like, can you say that in another way? Or can you tell me more about it? You're using the words that I would give to you in your groups. So what you would do is right now is you would be working on one example of being successful with these norms. It's important that you always reflect on areas where you're being successful and areas where you need improvement, because that's just a regular part of being a human. I self-reflect on my teaching, on what was successful for you guys and what wasn't successful. And I learn and I grow and I change, and that's your job as well. So let's think about our homework that we have. Chapter 3, we're going to meet Myrtle. As you read the chapter, you were looking for unfamiliar words. Scroll down here. Okay, so you would have had evidence flags or sticky notes, and you were looking through your chapter looking for words that you could have added to your synonyms and antonyms chart from the previous lesson. So be prepared to share out maybe some words that you found in your chapter that we should add to this list as a class when we come back together on Zoom. So what you would do is you would share your chapter 3 with your group. Unfortunately, we don't have a group to share that with, but that's okay because we'll share it together here on the computer. So my lovely little cartoon girl here said that Violet has arrived in New York City, and she went looking for her sister at the Henry Street Settlement House. She had no idea where to go and had very little money. Soon she met a colored girl named Myrtle, who helped her find food And together they started walking toward the settlement house. So you got this piece of Reader's Guide information about some historical background information. We learned about the Red Army advance in Warsaw and the Volstead Act. We got a glossary of some new words. And we got our Reader's Guide with our summary notes and our summary. Looked kind of like this. So when I filled in my summary guide for chapter 3, I filled it in this way. So if you need to pause the video so that you can refer to this, you can. If not, we can keep on going through. So I would like everyone, we're going to create a class summary after reading. And what I did was I put it together and it looked kind of like this. Okay, so remember that when you're revising your work after you're working and then coming back and reading the lesson, and maybe you're clarifying with questions with me through private message or email or on Zoom, remember that you can always go back and fix your work. You can always change things. You can always add things. But when you're adding things and making your revisions, make sure you're using, I chose green. Green's my favorite color. That's the one you'll see through the lessons, but you can use any color. Just make sure you're using a different color than what you're writing so that you can see what was your work and what was work that you've changed after we've met or had discussions or clarifications. Okay, so you'll need your novel as well as like a little ripped piece of paper or a Post-it or something for an evidence flag. And I want you to follow along from the middle of page 38 to the middle of 39. And I want you to reread where it says, I was sent here to attend the Girls Training Institute, and end with, would you? Asked Myrtle. So pause the video now, find this piece of information, and reread from the middle of 38 to the middle of 39, and come back to me. Okay, welcome back. So I want you to think about what this excerpt is mostly about. We don't have a triad to discuss it with, but you could discuss it out loud. Maybe you want to talk out loud to yourself. Ask yourself a couple of questions. What was this excerpt mostly about? Page 38 to 39. What is it mostly about? Okay, so you've had 5 minutes to reread 38 and 39 on your own. I want you to think with question 1 in your mind, remembering that rereading is an important strategy to help make sense of difficult text. So, what does the word loathed mean in the excerpt from page 38? The text says, Myrtle said that the last 3 words in a high nasal sing-song that communicated quite clearly that she loathed the place. Loathed. Pause the video if you need to. If you said that Myrtle hates the Girls Training Institute because it trains girls to be other people's maids and that she doesn't want to be anyone's maid, then you got the question correct. Okay, I'd like you to reread the next 2 paragraphs on page 39 quietly and independently. Pause the video now. Now you get question 2. Why does Violet think that Myrtle's situation is a lot like her own? And I want you to use evidence from the text to support your answer. If you finish reading before the allotted 3 to 5 minutes, you should quietly think about your answer and begin to find evidence and mark it with your evidence flag. You should think on your own, and then if you have the opportunity to, you could think together and answer the question, marking the evidence with your evidence flags. Okay, so you won't get an index card because we're not in class, but take 5 minutes to write your answer to the second text-dependent question. Use details from the text to support your answer. Why does Violet think that Myrtle's situation is a lot like her own? Pause the video here, go back in, look for text evidence, and answer the question. Okay, character analysis for Myrtle. Remember that story elements of a literary text are the following. A character is the person involved in the story, the setting, where and when the story take place, and evidence, the things that happen around the characters. So we're going to do a think, pair, share, or, our own version of it because we're separated. You want to identify the story element in chapter 3 of the Hope Chest. Think to yourself about what the story elements are. Discuss what you think about, and then you're going to share. And when you discuss and share, you're discussing with yourself, and sharing is writing down your answers, because we really don't have anybody to have a conversation with at this exact moment of time. We can discuss it at 2:30 when we meet on Zoom. So this gentleman says that for the events, Violet arrives in New York, meets a girl named Myrtle, who helps her find something to eat, and the Henry Street Settlement House, where Chloe's supposed to be. The characters are Violet and Myrtle, and the setting is New York City in 1918. Remember that you have begun to identify actions of various key characters that affect other people in the story. In chapter 1, we identified things that Violet did when she first discovered Chloe's letters. It's important to keep track of characters and look for ways that they change throughout the story, as well as how they interact with other characters. Remember, we're not just pleasure reading the book, we are using it to learn, but it's fun when the book is very enjoyable. Okay, so here's my Myrtle character anchor chart, and I've put this, if you could see it, here in my module notebook. So you're going to reread the following excerpt and identify Myrtle's actions and their effects on page 36, starting with a hand grabbed her arm. And you're going to go all the way to 38, where it says, Myrtle grabbed the square collar of Violet's blouse, just as the steam-powered automobile zoomed down the street. Okay? So you can, as you reread, think about and discuss, what did Myrtle do? How did it affect others? And what does it say about her character? These are the 3 things that we're putting inside our anchor chart here. So you have about 5 to 10 minutes. Go back in the story. You're rereading from 36 all the way to 38, and you're thinking about Myrtle. How did her actions affect others? What does this say about her character? Pause the video and then come back. Okay, so in the classroom, I would have used equity sticks to call on you guys, but we don't have those things. Let's think about what Myrtle took and how it affected others. What actions did she take? If you said something like she kept Violet from getting run over and cleaned her up after her fall on page 37, then great job on finding your evidence. Okay, so now I want you to think about and share out what you think this says about the kind of person Myrtle is. If she's somebody who helps somebody up and dusts them off from the street, what kind of person is Myrtle? You could say that she's caring and compassionate. So readers often have to infer why characters do and say things based on how other characters react to them. Not everything is going to be written out in black and white. She did this because she felt this way. You have to make some inference. You have to take what you know and apply it to that character. Tell us that you'll be keeping track of actions with Violet and Myrtle throughout the novel, because just like us, characters change throughout a book. So make sure that you have something like this inside your module notebook. Pause your video, and go get your module notebook and come back. Pause the video here so that you can set up your module notebook and copy down Myrtle's actions and what this says about her character. Pause the video now. Okay, great. So now we're going to add more ideas to your anchor chart. So you would find a partner who's not in your triad group, and you'd talk about today's learning target. So instead, we're just going to discuss it together. I can follow norms for triad talk when I participate in conversation with my reading partners. So hopefully you were able to come up with your answers, come up with your Myrtle's actions and what it says about her character, even though we weren't able to discuss it with each other. But we can discuss it in Zoom. I want you to read the historical background information for both chapters really careful before you start reading, as well as the glossary and the figurative complex language section. It's going to help clarify things for before you read the chapter. For homework, you're reading chapter 4 and chapter 5. Both chapters are available as read alouds on my YouTube channel, or you can read the book that's available in the conference room for you to go pick up at school. You're going to work on the summary notes for both chapters as well. So here's your homework for tonight. Chapters 4 and 5, then summary notes and the reader's guide for chapter 4, Henry Street, and the reader's guide summary notes for chapter 5, Hobie and the Brakeman. So let's preview what your homework is going to look like. Here's your historical background information about the settlement house. Here's your glossary, and here's your figurative and complex language. Here's your summary notes and your summary for chapter 4. And here's your historical background information for chapter 5. Your glossary and figurative and complex language for chapter 5. And your summary notes and summary for chapter 5, all of which are available on your Google Classroom. Okay, so you're going to work on classwork today, homework tomorrow, re-watching this video today and tomorrow, and getting a solid foundation on Myrtle. I will see you tonight at 2:30 on Zoom. Bye, guys.